In 1520, a Portuguese traveler named Domingo Paes arrived in Vijayanagara. The Vijayanagara Empire lasted for over 2 centuries, with nearly 500,000 people in its capital alone. How this empire was born from a frontier and became a city of victory. The year is 1336. The Delhi Sultanate has been pushing south for decades, a relentless military expansion that had already swallowed the kingdoms of northern and central India. 2 brothers, Harihara and Bukka, had served the Sultanate as administrators in the Deccan. At some point, they broke away. According to legend, they encountered a Hindu sage named Vijayanagara on the banks of the Tungabhadra River, in what is today Karnataka. He blessed their mission and guided their vision. They planted a flag on a rocky hill surrounded by boulders the size of houses, and they declared, "This is where we build." The location was deliberate. The terrain around the Tungabhadra was so rough, so broken by enormous granite boulders, that any invading army would struggle to even reach the city walls. Nature itself was the first line of defense. They named the city Vijayanagara. In Sanskrit, it means city of victory. It was an act of defiance spoken in stone. For 200 years, Vijayanagara did something remarkable. It held. While the Deccan Sultanates repeatedly attacked from the north, the empire absorbed every blow and pushed back. It fought 5 major sultanates, sometimes all at once, and in the process it became something extraordinary, a sanctuary. Scholars, poets, architects, musicians, and traders from across Asia flocked to Vijayanagara. The temples built during this era are staggering even today. The Virupaksha temple at Hampi, still active, still visited by thousands, was expanded so grandly that its towering gateway can be seen from miles away. The famous stone chariot of the Vitala temple complex, which appears on the Indian 50 rupee note, was carved during this time. A chariot made entirely of rock so precise that its stone wheels once turned. At the empire's height under Krishnadevaraya, who ruled from 1509 to 1529, Vijayanagara was at its most dazzling. He was a warrior king, a scholar, and a poet. Persian ambassadors called him the most powerful king in all of India. This was the world that stood for 200 years. But empires are not defeated by armies alone. They are defeated by the decisions made inside their own courts. After Krishnadevaraya died in 1529, the empire began to fracture. His successors were weaker, more suspicious, and more reliant on powerful nobles. Meanwhile, to the north, something unprecedented was happening. The 5 Deccan Sultanates, who had spent most of their history fighting each other, decided to set aside their rivalries. They had a common enemy, and they knew that if they struck together, they could end Vijayanagara once and for all. In 1564, they formed a coalition, 5 sultanates, one objective. The final king, Aliya Rama Raya, had spent decades playing the sultanates against each other. A brilliant, dangerous game of political chess. He had hired Muslim soldiers, allied with different sultanates at different times, and kept the balance of power in his favor. But the game had run out of moves. The coalition army marched south, and on January 23, 1565, they met the Vijayanagara army on a plain near the village of Talikota. The Vijayanagara army was enormous. Some estimates put it at over 600,000 soldiers, including war elephants and heavy artillery. By most accounts, they outnumbered the coalition. In the early hours of the battle, Vijayanagara was winning. Rama Raya himself rode into the field, aged, some say, over 90 years old, commanding from a golden palanquin. The sight of him was meant to inspire. For a time it did. And then everything unraveled at once. 2 of Rama Raya's most trusted Muslim commanders, employed within his own army, switched sides mid-battle. In the chaos of the reversal, Rama Raya was captured. The Adil Shah of Bijapur personally beheaded him. His head was mounted on a spear and carried across the battlefield. When the Vijayanagara soldiers saw it, the army collapsed. Not retreated, collapsed. Hundreds of thousands of soldiers broke ranks and ran. The coalition cavalry poured through the gap and rode straight for the city. What happened next is described by every contemporary account in the same way. The people of Vijayanagara fled. The soldiers who survived fled. And then the coalition armies entered a city of 500,000 people and found it empty. For 3 months, the coalition forces looted and burned Vijayanagara. The temples were stripped, The palaces were demolished. The market streets, where Domingo Pius had seen pearls sold by weight, were ransacked and left as rubble. A Portuguese account written shortly after described riding through the city and seeing nothing but ash and silence for miles. The city was never reoccupied. The Nayaka governors who survived scattered across South India and established their own smaller kingdoms in Tanjavur, Madurai, Ikeri, and Keladi. The cultural legacy of Vijayanagara survived in fragments carried by those refugees. The Carnatic music tradition, the temple architecture of Tamil Nadu, the literary culture of Telugu, all of it carries DNA from what was built at Vijayanagara. But the city itself? Today it is called Hampi. It is a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Tourists walk among the ruins of the stone chariot and the colonnaded market halls and the great bathing tanks of the royal court. The boulders are still there, ancient, enormous, indifferent. And if you stand among them at dusk, you can almost see what Domingo Pius saw. A city as large as Rome, and very beautiful to the sight. The story of Vijayanagara is not a story about Hindu versus Muslim. That framing diminishes everyone involved. Vijayanagara employed Muslim soldiers and allied with Muslim rulers throughout its history. The Sultanates used Hindu mercenaries and administrators. It is a story about power, about what happens when brilliant defensive strategy runs for 2 centuries and then meets a single catastrophic moment of betrayal. It is a story about a city so magnificent that even its ruins, 500 years later, leave visitors speechless. And it is a story that most of us were never told. Because history, like language, is written by whoever controls the printing press. If you want to go deeper on this, the temples, the kings, the specific battles, let me know in the comments. There's enough material here for 10 more videos. If you're new here, subscribe. We cover the history that should have been in your textbook but wasn't. I'll see you in the next one.